So far in the series, we have explored the importance of design patterns and looked at some heavy hitters, starting with singleton and then moving into factory method, observer, and strategy. These patterns already give you a ton of power to write modular, extensible, and testable code. But we are not done yet. In this video, we'll explore 3 more high-impact patterns that show up everywhere, from UI frameworks to middleware, game engines to microservices. We'll start with the decorator pattern, a flexible alternative to subclassing when you want to add features to an object dynamically. Then we'll move to the command pattern, a way to wrap actions as objects so you can queue them, undo them, or trigger them later. And finally, the adapter pattern, which helps incompatible systems talk to each other without changing existing code. For each one, we'll look at what problem it solves, how it works using the diagram you see on screen, a clean Java example, and where it shows up in the real world. So let's get started with the decorator pattern first. Let's say you are building a text editor. You start with a basic editor that can display and edit plain text. But now, you want to add features like spell check, autosave, syntax highlighting, or markdown preview. The naive approach? Subclass everything, but that gets out of control fast. You create a spell checker editor, a spell check and autosave editor, a spell check, autosave, and markdown editor, and before you know it, you're drowning in subclasses. And that's not scalable. The decorator pattern solves this by letting you wrap your base object with extra functionality, without changing its original code or using deep inheritance trees. You just build small, focused decorators, each adding a specific features, and stack them however you want at runtime. It gives you flexibility without alerting the original object or exploding your class hierarchy. So here at the top, you have the component interface. In our case, that's the text editor interface. It defines a common method, render. To the right, concrete component represents our basic editor. It's the simplest version of the editor. No spell check, no autosave, just plain text. Now in the middle, we have the decorator. That is an abstract class that also implements text editor, but internally wraps another text editor object. It powers the render call, allowing us to hook in extra behavior. At the bottom, we have the concrete decorator, like spell check decorator or autosave decorator. Each one adds a specific feature, like checking spelling or enabling autosave, before or after calling the original editor. And the best part, you can stack decorators however you like, without changing the base code. The result? You can stack features in any order you want, just by wrapping. So here, we start with the text editor interface. This is the base behavior. Every editor must implement the render method. And here is our basic editor. It simply renders plain text. No fancy features, just the basics. The editor decorator is an abstract class that wraps around text editor. It delegates the render call to the base, allowing us to add extra behavior before or after it. Now each feature becomes its own decorator, like spell check decorator and autosave decorator. They don't know or care what other features exist. They just add their own behavior. So here, basic editor is our core component. We decorate it with spell check decorator, which adds functionality without changing the original code. And here's the magic. We wrap the basic editor with spell check and then wrap that with autosave. And when we call render, it goes layer by layer, adding feature in order. So no subclass explosion, no if-else logic, just clean, composable behavior. Think of it like adding filters in Instagram. The photo is your base object, and each filter wraps the original, adding something new without modifying the original image. So that was the decorator pattern. Great for adding new features to an object at runtime, without touching its core. But now let's talk about something different. Actions. If you ever wanted to turn an action into an object, that's exactly what the command pattern lets you do. It wraps a request, like turning on a light, submitting a form, or sending an email, into an object that can be queued, executed later, undone, or logged. Why is that useful? Because let's say you're building a remote control that can trigger different devices, a TV, a fan, a light. You could hard-code conditionals in the remote itself. Something like this. If button is 1, turn on the lights. If button is 2, start the fan. Now the remote has to know everything about the devices. What if you want to add an undo button or swap out devices? That's where command pattern comes in. It decouples the object that triggers the action from the one that performs it. So here you have a device like a light. That's a receiver. It knows how to do the actual work like turning on or off. Then you have command objects. They represent the individual buttons on the remote. Each command knows what device it's connected to and what action to perform. The remote control itself is the invoker. It doesn't know how to turn on the light. It just triggers a command when a button is pressed. And finally, there is the client. That's you, setting it all up. You pair the remote buttons with the right commands and devices. And this separation makes it easy to add new buttons, swap devices, or even add features like undo, queuing, or logging without changing how the remote or devices work internally. So here is our light class, the receiver. It contains the actual business logic, turn on and turn off. Next, we define the command interface. Every command will implement the execute method. We now have two concrete command classes, light on command and light off command. Each one wraps the light and knows exactly which method to trigger when execute is called. The remote control acts as the invoker. It doesn't know anything about lights. It just calls execute on whichever command is assigned. So in the main method, we wire it all up. The client creates commands, assigns them to the remote, and presses the button. The remote doesn't know what the command does, and that's the point. You can now add more commands, queue them, log them, or undo them without changing the remote, the light, or the interface. And that's the beauty of the command pattern. It gives you flexibility, decouples logic, and makes your actions fully programmable. Now let's shift gears. What if you need to integrate with an existing system, but the interface doesn't match what your code expects? You can't rewrite the third-party library, and you don't want to refactor your entire app either. That's exactly where the adapter pattern comes in. It acts like a translator between incompatible interfaces. Imagine this. You're working on a modern music streaming app. Your codebase is clean, uses interfaces, and follows design principles. Somewhere in your code, you have a media player interface with a method like play string file name. And it's the standard your app is built around. Every audio module in your system depends on this interface. Maybe your search results pass songs to mediaplayer.play, or your playlist manager queues up tracks using it. But now, you are asked to integrate an older audio library. Why? Because say the legacy library still supports a special audio format your new system doesn't handle yet. And maybe it was built years ago, and maybe it was from a third-party vendor. It works, but it uses a completely different method. Say start playback and takes string file in a class called legacy player. You can't change the old library. It's already compiled, possibly used by other teams, or poorly documented. And you don't want to go into your clean app and change every place that expects media player just to accommodate this one legacy class. And that's where the adapter pattern comes in. It lets you wrap the legacy class in an adapter that implements your app's expected interface. So you don't have to touch the existing code or violate your clean architecture. So here on the right we have the adaptee. That's our legacy class with an incompatible interface. On the left, the adapter implements the interface that the client expects. In this case, something like media player. The concrete adapter wraps the adaptee and translates calls from the new interface to the old one. The client works only with the adapter interface. It has no idea the adaptee even exists. And this setup lets you connect systems without rewriting or tightly coupling code. So here, this is the interface our app expects, media player with play method. And here is the legacy class, legacy player with a different method name. It's functional but doesn't match the modern interface. The media adapter bridges the two. It implements media player, but inside it delegates to start playback from the legacy class. In the client code here, we use the adapter exactly like any modern media player. So we have cleanly integrated legacy behavior without changing the legacy class or the client's expectation. Think of it like a travel adapter plug. Your laptop charger expects a USB-C outlet, but you are in a country with an older wall socket. So instead of buying a new laptop or rewiring the hotel, you just plug in an adapter. It converts the interface and everything works. So you just learned how to extend behavior with Decorator, decouple actions using command, and bridge old and new code with adapter. These patterns show up everywhere, from real-world systems to coding interviews. And if you want me to cover more patterns like proxy, facade, or builder, drop a comment below. And if this helped, give it a like, share it, and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. See you in the next one.